the Madman! Welcome to Death Knight's Unholy Rune section. I actually had really high expectations and I was let down quite a lot. And we're gonna start with, like, this is the card that I first saw. I wake up pretty late and I look at the card that's most upvoted. It shows up on like the first part of my page and it's Plague Grain. 1 mana, 3 unholy rune requirements, so this had better be good, right? Because you gotta put 3 unholy runes in your deck to play this card. Gain 4 corpses. Wow, that's a lot of corpse. Shuffle 4 crates into your deck that summon a 2/2 undead when drawn. So this card does seem really powerful. It's 1 mana, eventually get 8/8, but more importantly, it puts 4 corpses into your possession. And if these corpses are worth anything, they better be worth something, right? Then this is a very efficient corpse generator. We've seen some cards already revealed that on turn 2 can snowball if you have corpses generated on turn 1. So Plague Grain into Necromancer, like that's actually a pretty good unholy opening. But this Plague Grain card, I love the flavor of it because you got some guys bringing in the Plague Grain, and then Arthas says, Uther, there's something about the plague you should know. Oh no, it's too late. These people have all been infected. They may look fine now, but it's a matter of time before they turn into the undead.
This entire city must be purged.
So yeah, such good flavor. Those peasants carrying those boxes are dying, and they're generating the corpses, and they're summoning 2/2 undead. In fact, let's go ahead and jump right into a deck that someone made revolving around Plague Grain. That's so good! But yeah, suffice it to say, if there is a good use for corpses, then Plague Grain seems insane. It seems like in general corpses are getting valued as like +1/+1 in stats, or maybe like half a mana worth of value. Seems like a good investment idea where you put in a mana and you put in a card and you generate the corpses early. You even have the potential to get the undead later. But this is the start of a little bit of a shiver. It's like, ooh, can we spend our corpses? This is the archetype unholy that's supposed to be able to spend these corpses well. So I mean, we got the corpse generation, now can we spend them? Uh-oh. 2 mana, we got Bone Digger Geist, 2 mana, 2/2 undead, 1 unholy requirement. Battlecry, spend a corpse to gain +1/+2. So you got your Grain into Geist curve. Lets you get a 2 mana 3/4 on the board. Woo, if you draw exactly those 2 cards. But yeah, it's if you don't get a corpse on turn 2, you're gonna be really sad. And that's my main concern about this card. It's feast or famine. There might not be that many ways to get a corpse on turn 1 consistently, because your opponent very well might not play anything for you to trade into on turn 1. You got Necrotic Mortician, 2 mana, 2 unholy rune requirement, 2/3. Battlecry, if a friendly undead died after your last turn, discover an unholy rune card. So here's the if friendly undead died after your last turn text again. As a reminder, that means if the opponent killed one of your undead minions on their turn, or if you trade an undead on your turn and then play the Mortician, this will trigger. So yeah, it seems like a shoe-in card as long as unholy cards are good. Over in the 3 mana area, we got Meat Grinder. 1 unholy requirement, 3 mana 3/4. Battlecry, shred a random minion in your deck to gain 3 corpses. So yeah, it does seem like unholy has good, efficient ways to generate corpses on cards that are decently statted for the cost. Really cool flavor. I can imagine the absolutely brutal entrance of this Meat Grinder as it tears apart one of your cards in your deck. If you're playing a general swarmy zoo deck, it probably doesn't matter if you destroy a random card in your deck, since you're just a zoo anyways, or a token Death Knight. Hopefully we get good corpse spenders so you can use it. Foreshadowing. Blightfang, 3 mana 3/3 beast, 1 unholy requirement. Battlecry, infect all enemies with Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 zombie with taunt for your opponent. Stats are really good if you infect 2 people. Main problem is you actually have to infect stuff, so this card's gonna vary on goodness level depending on how many minion-based decks there are. Should in general fit into an Unholy deck though. You got Unholy Frenzy, 3 mana, 1 Unholy requirement. Choose an enemy minion, your minions attack it, resummon any of that die. So the goal would be to have your Death Rattle or your Reborn minions attack something that has a valuable minion on the opponent's side, and then you would get them back with the Reborn, with the Death Rattle, while also triggering their Reborn and their Death Rattle. Situationally good. In a meta where there aren't very many big minions though, not as good. And alright, we got some Corpse Spenders coming up. Ymirjar Deathbringer, 3 mana, 2 Unholy requirement. Oh, this is getting good. It's an 2 Unholy requirement that is gonna spend corpses. It's gotta be good, right? 3 mana, 3/3 undead. Taunt, Death Rattle, spend 3 corpses to summon a 3/3 Risen Ymirjar with Taunt. It's Rumbletusk Shaker! That's from the very weak set, Rostakon's Rumble. Now obviously no one was playing Shaker, and yes, this card is better than that. You lopped a mana off, and you gave it 1 health extra, and you gave it Taunt. And you have to spend 3 corpses for the privilege? And if you don't spend 3 corpses, it's a 3 mana 3/3 Taunt. Wow, this is some trash here. So that's pretty bad, but let's take a look at this 4 mana card. Tomb Guardians, 4 mana, 2 Unholy requirement. Oh, alright, we got another Corpse Spender here. This should be good, especially given the 2 Unholy requirement. Shadow Spell. Summon 2 2/2 zombies with Taunt. Spend 4 corpses to give them Reborn? Wait, you're telling me for 4 mana I'm getting 2 2/2s? So it's like 4/4 with Taunt, and then if I spend 4 corpses, they have Reborn? And that's kind of similar to summoning like 2 Annoyotrons. It's like for 4 mana, I'm not gonna want to really spend, 4 mana to get 2 Annoyotrons. And what, I have to spend 4 corpses also? Like, I have to be imagining that this stuff was like at one point super overpowered, and then they nerfed it to oblivion. It's like, this is terrible. Now, to be fair, the zombies and the reborn zombies do all leave corpses. So that is 4 corpses that you're gonna get back. Alright, well, let's take a look at this 4 mana, 3 Unholy requirement. This better be good. It's also a Corpse Spender. Give your minions +1 attack. Grave Strength. Spend 5 corpses to give them +3 instead. Okay, so unlike Bloodlust, which is, 5 mana, give your minions +3 attack for 1 turn, this gives your minions +3 attack permanently. That's actually pretty good. So the goal is to like flood the board and then play Grave Strength. Alright, I think we got the general idea of how the 3 Unholy deck is meant to be played. The question is, are there enough efficient, low-cost minions that create more minions? Minions that are good for their cost, that are sticky, that you can actually Grave Strength. And I am aware that this is where you point to Tomb Guardians and Ymirjar Deathbringer and say, hey, it's those cards. But I just don't think those are good enough. In order to build a good token deck, a swarmy deck that you then Bloodlust, or that you then play your wide buffs on, you need to actually have good minions. Like, that's requirement 1. It seems like these minions aren't actually good. On 5 mana, you got Possessive Fire, 1 Unholy requirement. 5 mana, 3/3 Battlecry, summon 2 1/1 fighters with Rush and Reborn. So this is a lot like the Derailed Coaster card. Instead of summoning multiple 1/1s, you're getting just 2 exactly, but it's kind of like 4 1/1s because Rush and Reborn. Like a very consistent Derailed Coaster, but nobody was playing Derailed Coaster other than Involved Shaman. Worth mentioning is this is 5 corpses in 1, so the possibility of Unholy to generate a bunch of corpses, like, that's not in the question. You're going to be able to get your corpses, but the problem is, can you actually spend those for value? There's something that a brilliant person in chat stated was like a corpse tax. And I'm seeing it, where basically, if you don't have the corpses, the card is worse than normal. If you have like half the corpse requirement, then the card is about fair. And if you bring more corpses to the table, then the card's like actually good. But I don't know about that particular level of balance. It seems like there's too much of a corpse tax to even play the card initially. Or rather, the payoff isn't big enough. Like, even if I spend all of my corpses, even if I get the maximum corpse benefit, it just doesn't seem that good. Oh, I left this one out, probably, for good reason, but Nerubian Swarm Guard, 4 mana, 1 Unholy, 1/3 with Taunt, Undead. Battlecry summon 2 corpse copies of this minion. It's 4 mana for 3 1/3s with Taunt. That's just bad. There's a warrior card that does this. There is no hand buff, so you're never getting this buffed. Alright, we got a fun endgame card for Unholy. A 9 mana shadow spell, fill your board with random undead. The main problem with this card is that it's very wide variance in terms of how many stats you're getting. It is 9 mana to just summon a bunch of stats. It's like, I don't think Unholy is really looking to do something like this. They're not really looking to get into the late game. Seems out of place for the deck archetype. The 10 mana card shows like a little bit of what the Unholy deck is trying to do. It's Stitched Giant, 10 mana, 8/8, 2 Unholy Rune requirement. Costs 1 less for each corpse you've spent this game, so could be a 0 mana 8/8. It's a card like this that causes Corpse Bride to like actually get a second look at, because the Spend Your Corpses cards were so disappointing. I figured they'd be better than Corpse Bride, but no, Corpse Bride is actually the base okay one. This one really showcases the corpse tax because this card needs you to have really like 4 corpses in order to be a fair card. At 8 corpses, it's a pretty good card. Well, yeah, given how many corpses you're going to want to spend in order to have a cheaper Stitch Giant, I could see it. That is about the best deck that I looked at that made sense for Unholy. It's just that the minions for Unholy are too weak. The payoffs of spending corpses seem like they're not enough. The base essence is that the Unholy Death Knight cards do not look very good. I played around with a few of the decks and it looked far weaker than the Frost deck. It was possible to splash 1 Frost rune and 2 Unholy runes, which is tempting because you do have a really relevant Frost set of cards. You got the Acolyte of Death to play with your swarmy undead minions. That card alone is a really big reason to run 1 Frost in your 2 Unholy deck. So unfortunately, by doing so, you miss out on the best corpse spender. So yeah, difficult decisions. But I think the easy decision is don't be a sucker, don't play Unholy. Because this looks like a very challenging deck to build well, if it's even possible. It just, you always compare the deck that you come up with a currently existing archetype. The Imp Lock actually has very unfair cards because the Imps themselves are pretty good, but also it's got the location, File Library, it's got the spell, Impending Catastrophe, all of which are like grossly unfair and don't have any extra requirements or costs attached. The Aggro Druid more consistently gets stuff on the board early. It actually has board-wide buffs that are decent between Herald of Nature and Pride's Fury and Power of the Wild. What did Death Knights get? They get Anti-Magic Shell. Wow, 3 mana for +1/+1? So that's my take on Unholy. Let's take a look at what the deck builders in chat came up with. Early game, you're going to want to start off with a 1-drop. Could be Body Bag or Peasant. Play Grain. Could be an interesting start. Skeletal Sidekick. Not a great 1-drop to start with, but it's another possibility. There's probably going to be a better 2-drop than Amalgam of the Deep, which is just masquerading here as an undead, but you could play it for value as well. The dream is you start with Body Bagger or play Grain and you go into Battlefield Necromancer. I don't really see the appeal into like curving into Infect Peasant. Seems like not a great 2-drop, but alright. On turn 3, are you going to play the 3 mana 3/3 Taunt? Like that's about the best play here. On turn 4, you got Tomb Guardians, and on turn 5, you have Possessifier. It's like, blah. This particular deck list doesn't have very many corpse spenders, which sadly makes kind of sense because there's just not that many good corpse spenders. You got the Tomb Guardians and you got your Marjar Deathbringer, and you want to spend the corpses so you can have your Stitch Giant be cheaper. The Unholy deck does look like it's going to have a bunch of stuff die, and it does need card draw, so Chillfall and Baron does make a lot of sense. And a lot of cards with Infuse make a lot of sense. You got Merlocula, Famished Full, perhaps Sylvanas. The Invincible makes sense near the end, because there's a bunch of undead here, and Invincible is really good with undead. Saradonathrius obviously makes a lot of sense, because, you know, you're having a bunch of guys die, it's a good finisher. But still, this deck just doesn't look like it compares to other similar decks. There is the simple idea to splash one Frost Rune into the deck, and then that allows you to run Acolyte of Death. It's a good 3-mana 3/4, which draws a bunch of cards when you have undead on the board, and it's almost like this deck's version of composting. The main problem appears to be that there's not that many other good Frost cards to put with it. You got Bonebreaker as an aggressive option, you got Defrost to draw more cards, spend some corpses on the cheap. Corpse Bride does look pretty promising as a big corpse spender, able to spend 8 corpses in a go, discount Stitch Giant by 8. The main problem is if you don't draw your Corpse Bride, you're very sad. So yeah, unfortunately, for people who like swarmy decks and like the idea of summoning a bunch of guys and then like your opponent clears them, well, they're corpses now and you can spend all those corpses as a resource. That's the unholy way. It is a good idea, but the cards, they just ended up being like far weaker than I thought they would be. So, I don't know about this one.